Welcome to another Interview Wednesday here on Turnbuckle Trash Talk. I am the officiant, Kent, and joining me at this time is Mr. Opportunity, Jayson Falcone. Jayson, first off, thank you so much for joining me.
It is my absolute pleasure to be here. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here. It's big time for me, big time.
Well, I want to talk to you about your career in wrestling, but I want to start at the very, very beginning. When did you first discover wrestling? When did it first enter your life? Who, influenced it on you?
I got to be perfectly honest. There's nothing really specific that got me into the business, like as far as me wanting to be a part of the business or becoming a fan even. I just loved the wrestling, all forms of wrestling, whether it's here in the States or overseas or anything like that. I just loved watching wrestling. So I don't want to say anything like really in particular stuck out as like what got me interested. Is just like a general feeling is like what I've had since 3 years old.
Do you have a distinct first wrestling memory? Like you can remember the exact moment where you were when you watched it, that kind of thing? Like I know one of my first memories was WrestleMania 5. I was actually watching that on TV as a child. But anything?
As far as like seeing like a show goes, not exactly, but it was
it's just kind of always been there for you, just kind of like a constant.
It was just what I've always wanted to do, basically. Is the only way I can explain it. Just what I've always, just the love that I have for it is pretty crazy.
Who were some of your favorites growing up? Like who really stood out to you as like an influence, or maybe just you were a huge fan of those guys? I've seen people mention everyone from Hulk Hogan to Jeff Hardy.
I mean, I like wrestling, so I just liked, I had a particular interest in everybody, so I try to model myself as far as a performer in the ring as from guys like Bret Hart, because I love his technicality. Kurt Angle, I love his technicality too, but he's very explosive, much more athletic. I do a bit of high flying, so not necessarily Jeff Hardy, just all around.
You're like a crossover of multiple types because you like the technical aspect, but you can appreciate the kind of cruiserweight, high flying aspect.
Exactly,
too.
And that matches me up pretty well with pretty much anybody as far as styles go. Specific styles go, I can probably go with
You can
anybody.
kind of adapt your style to whoever you're facing, and that's kind of a nice quality to have, because I've found that a lot of wrestlers who have a very specific style have a hard time when they're matched up with someone technical if they're a high flyer, or vice versa.
Right.
Was there a particular moment when you decided now is the time for me to go do this? Now is the time I want to pursue this? Was it, you were watching something and you were like, why aren't I doing this? Or was there just a time in your life that you just said, now's the time to go train?
Well, it was more along the lines of like, why haven't I done any training already? Because it was close by, you know what I mean? And I knew about this school for maybe a few years, It's just, I don't know. I just got a good swift kick in the ass. And a gut feeling like this is the right time, It was just like, I didn't have a specific day of when I wanted to become a professional, when I wanted starting. It was just, this is the time now to do it,
And where did you train, and what was that experience like from, applying to the school, getting into the school, your first day of training? Like, take me through what it was like going from, just a fan of wrestling to actually training to become a wrestler. What was that process like for you?
I can remember it like it just happened. I did my research and I settled on Dory Funk Jr.'s Funkin' Conservatory School
up in Ocala.
In Ocala, Florida. And obviously he's got a outstanding resume, former NWA champion and all that stuff. Second longest reigning, I think. So that alone would probably, if that was his only credential, that would draw me to him anyway.
Sure.
But the fact that he's got history with the biggest names this industry has ever seen, along with the fact that he's had a long reign as NWA champion and things like that. So that's what drew me, and it wasn't too far away from my house too. That kind of I took that into account too. So that's just where it started, and from there, I remember first meeting with him, and I can remember touching the ring for the very first time, like my fingertips. And as cliche as it sounds, that's like the exact moment where I knew that this is what I wanted to do for as long as I possibly can.
Yeah, I remember. That's actually a memory that stands out for me, and I'm pretty sure a lot of other wrestlers too. Is that first time you actually get to touch a ring, let alone climb into the ropes? Like I had seen it on TV, I'd been to live shows, but I'd never been so close that I could actually touch it, and that was just a life-changing moment.
Yeah,
for me
it's a different story. Like once you get in there and quote unquote bump for the first time, it's quite the experience, you know what I mean? But it's as much as it hurt, I just wanted more of it, not more of the hurt, obviously. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to get in there and do as much as I can.
What was training like for you? Did you find certain things came easier than others? What was the hardest thing that training came for you? What was that experience like?
I don't want to say that everything came pretty naturally to me, but time it took. I'll admit it took time for me to catch on to things, but even now, 9 years in, just over 9 years in, I've been learning every single time I step through the ropes, even outside the ropes, just whether it's studying videotape or going to see a local event, just to check out who I could be possibly facing one day. Who knows,
What do you remember about your first match? What was that experience like for you? I've heard some horror stories. I've heard some great stories about first matches. Do you remember who you fought, where it was, how the match went in your perspective?
Johnny Romano was my very first match. Pop star Johnny Romano, my very first match, and it's on YouTube. You can look it up. You know what I mean? It is what it is. It's my first match, but I knew. I was obviously very nervous, but I knew that once I stepped through those curtains, there was no turning back. I couldn't run away at that point. So it was like I just went out there the best that I could. He took care of me as best as he could with obviously the very limited experience I had, and so from then on, it's just been a steady climb as much as I can.
Well, and you've had a lot of success on and off throughout the 9 years. I mean, you've been tag team champion, world champion. Like, you've held a lot of accomplishments. What was that journey like from you? Like, when the reality settled in for you of, like, this is the life of a pro wrestler, how did that feel? How did your family react to that? Like, what was the support like or the reaction like? How was that experience?
My family has always supported me since day one. There's always going to be those detractors, but it was my family that kept me on course, came to the shows with me, things of that nature. A lot has changed since then, you know what I mean? But for the most part, been very supportive of everything that I've done, and with the traveling and all that stuff, that can be a pain sometimes, but I mean, if you want it bad enough, you'll do it, There's certain sacrifices that need to be made or that are made that's not in my best favor at times, but, it is what you got to do when you want to achieve certain success in this industry.
How have you been able to balance being a family man with being a wrestler? I know there's kind of this aura over the business that it's really hard to make that happen. You get your couple standouts like AJ Styles, who can be a good family man and also a wrestler, but most struggle in that regard. How have you been able to maintain that, and what advice would you give to others who are in the wrestling business and might have a family as well?
They obviously have to be very supportive first, because any doubt there from maybe your significant other, for lack of a better term, you got to have that person behind you that wants you to succeed, because at the end of the day, it'll make you want to succeed more. I still, with the backing of anybody or not, I still wanted to succeed in this business, but it's just better when you have somebody to, poke and prod you a little bit to get you to where you want to go.
And where do you want to go? What's your goal in all this? Some people are just happy where they're at. They're able to do this, for fun. It's a hobby. Other people have dreams of the WWE, New Japan. Some even say NWA. What is your goal? Where would you like to end up?
I want to be the best professional wrestler that I can possibly be. If that takes me to Ring of Honor, New Japan, Impact Wrestling, NWA, WWE, NXT, whatever, AEW, then so be it. But I'm not going to say, I'm not going to set myself up for failure. I'm not going to say that I'm going to be here in this amount of time, and when that time comes, I'm not there.
Right.
I'll just be disappointing myself at the end of the day, and I'd like to say I'm proud of most of the things I did. Some things I'm disappointed, but that's the nature of the business. But you just got to have it. You just got to want it.
Well, and I think that's really good that you set realistic goals for yourself, but you also have this kind of ultimate end goal of saying, I want to be the best professional wrestler I can be.
I mean, because don't get me wrong. That is obviously should be everybody's goal, is to get to those companies, whether they consider either one of those companies bigger than the others, that's upon them. But if I can work for the biggest company possible, absolutely. That's obviously, I want to showcase my talents to the entire world, and I'm trying to do it as best as I can now, but obviously to do it on a bigger stage is obviously where I should be, or where I need to be.
Where did the idea of Mr. Opportunity, Jayson Falcone, come from? Because, a lot of people say, oh, I'm just me turned up to 11. But I feel like you bring this kind of extra character element of like, I'm just going to make opportunities if they're not given to me. And if one arises, I'm going to take it, right. By any means necessary. Where did that kind of aspect come into your character?
It almost happened by accident, you know what I mean? But I guess a certain promoter over the years has been looking at me and said, you kind of make the most of every opportunity. And so he said, he said, how about Mr. Opportunity? I said, well, okay, that was very early on, probably 2012 or 13. And I just kind of ran with it. And looking back on everything that I've done, is, again, I'm coming up on 10 years. Next year in 2021. So it's like looking back on the past 10 years, it's like as much opportunity that I had thrown at me, I've taken. I've earned opportunities. I had opportunities given to me. I've never taken anything for granted. So I just took it as they come and dealt with them as best as I can.
What's the funniest or most unbelievable wrestling story you have? Whether it's a road story, whether it's a match that you were in, what is kind of like something that stands out to you about those almost 10 years you've been in the business, a memory that you'll carry with you forever?
I guess as far as stories go, I can remember a road trip to, I believe, to St. Louis it was, and we were all in the car and we were just saying, we're using the alphabet, but for every letter of the alphabet, you had to mention like a tag team.
All right.
You know what I mean? So
that's challenging.
That took a long time to do, and it kept us up for the 15 hours or whatever it was to drive there. Any other moments, nothing is, I just love the business, so like every time I get the chance to perform, is a big moment for me, so I try to take that, live in the moment thing, and just run with it.
What's your favorite match you've had so far?
My favorite match was actually against a guy, Lance Alante, the hot one, Lance Alante, out of Georgia, St. Mary's, Georgia, and we had a street fight for United States Wrestling Alliance about 2 years ago, and it was a pretty electric feeling, it was probably between 400 and 500 people there,
that's a big draw.
By indie standards, that's a really huge draw.
That's a lot.
You know what I mean? So like I was like I said, I lived in that moment, and that probably stands out as among a lot of other things like wrestling. Sam Shaw, former TNA superstar, things like that. That was probably my most favorite match, I guess. I'm
going to ask you the 4 questions I ask everybody at the end of every interview.
Okay.
Number 1, What's your kind of perspective about wrestling as a whole right now? Because there's a lot of it, and by a lot I mean a lot. We got the Wednesday Night Wars going on. We got NWA. We got Impact kind of coming back from the dead.
Right.
New Japan making more of a U.S. presence. What are your thoughts about wrestling as a whole? Because I feel like, from the looks of it, it could be the beginning of a boom, but also from like ratings and everything like that, it's not quite showing up yet. What's your thoughts?
With all of those things going on right now, I mean, obviously when, let's think back 20 years ago, when things were really like, as far as heating up, as far as like the wrestling business goes, and there was really only one place to work, maybe two.
Yeah, for a good over a decade.
If there's a third one, you'll be lucky to find a good third one. But to have all of these places right now, big companies, there's just more opportunities for guys and gals to work. And that's the most important thing, is that they have an opportunity to work somewhere, because this generation has to get the next generation prepared so we can have longevity to this business for decades and decades.
What misconceptions or illusions did you have about wrestling when you got into the business that were quickly dispelled? For example, some people said, I didn't think bumping was going to hurt as much as it did. Or someone might say, I thought we'd get paid at least a little bit more than we actually do. What kind of illusions did you have?
Not to break kayfabe or anything like that, but if this is the place to talk about it, I'll talk about it. Talking is very important. Communicating, whether it's with your opponent or with your tag team partner, because obviously safety is number one, so you want to communicate in that aspect. And you want to anyway, because your job for both you guys, or however many people's match, is to entertain the people that are watching you, that paid to see you. So communication is key.
So you really didn't think there'd be as much communication as there really is, and is needed to be.
Between the combatants, between the production people in the back, between the interviewers, announcers, to the referee, to the timekeeper, it's just
There's just so much talking.
It's all has to be coordinated to put on the best product possible.
If you had to give a piece of advice to someone who's not in wrestling yet but wants to be, what would you tell them?
There's so many variables, There's some days I want to say, don't do it. There's some days do I want to say, yes, do it. But the most important thing is you have to feel it. You have to feel it. Like, you can't just go to a Wednesday night show one day, or whatever day of the week it is, and say that I can do what these guys do. They're athletic, I'm athletic. Just because you've been athletic, let's say in high school or whatever in college, it's a totally different monster once you step inside those ropes. So you have to feel it in here. I mean, you can know it, you can say it all you want, but if you don't feel it here, then you have no place being in those ropes.
Yeah, you have to have a real love for this business to do it, because it is going to test you every single time, whether it's not just technically in the ring, but like emotionally, mentally, physically, in so many ways. This business is going to test you, so you better really love it if you're going to try it.
Exactly. There's also a thing, like, as far as athleticism goes, there's a totally different thing between training in the gym and in-ring training. There's
both are equally important.
Right.
Yeah,
there's ring
definitely a difference.
there's being in shape, and then there's being in ring shape.
Yeah. Ring conditioning is a whole different beast.
Is a whole nother beast.
And I think we've seen that on shows like Tough Enough, where they'll take these guys who are very athletic and very, physically fit, but as soon as they start running drills, they blow up almost immediately, because it's just an entirely different beast. I absolutely agree with you on that one. My final question is, if you could change one thing about wrestling, whether it's fan perception, the audience, the in-ring, backstage, anything, just if you could change one thing about wrestling, what would it be?
Eliminate the politics. This is a business, so obviously there's going to be politics involved. People wanting to succeed. You can succeed all you want, but don't crap on the guy behind you, or crap on the guy in front of you for being in front of you. This should be one big family. We should all help each other out. And yes, it is a business, and you're trying to get ahead, but there's certain ways to do it. And some people don't do it the right way, and some people do it the right way. And when you do it the right way and you attain a certain success, that's when you know that you've done something.
Well, now I want to take it to a segment. Ref Tony Stabile has named Take It Home. This is your chance to plug your social media, any promotions that you work for, anything you want to talk about. It's your time. Go.
ACW, you catch me here Wednesday nights at the Gulfview Event Center. USWA, I'm trying to think of names. There's a lot of them, you know what I mean? I'm trying to think specifically. Destiny Combat Championship Wrestling. You catch me at those shows. Social media, facebook.com / Jayson Falcone, and just hit me up, promoters.
Well, Jayson, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you guys for checking out another Interview Wednesday here on Turnbuckle Trash Talk.